Well, let's move to our first topic of discuss. Emerging from an excruciating year faced with COVID-19 pandemic, falling crude oil price, rising inflation, amongst other issues. Now, the Nigerian economy has been projected to experience a gradual growth recovery in the year 2021. Yes, while there were projections that the economy could exit recession before the end of this quarter. There have been fresh concerns that new restrictions aimed at containing the resurgence of COVID-19 could wipe away the gains of recent increase in activities and rally in oil prices. With the country's debt profile amounting to about 31 trillion naira, that's about 85.9 billion US dollars, the government is facing what is increasingly looking like a fiscal crisis as revenues continues to fall while a sizable portion of government funds are going into debt servicing. What a year. Joining me now live from our Abuja studios to give more insight into our topic of discuss. He wears many caps. He's also a public affairs analyst and the coordinator of the 2021 to 2025 Medium-Term National Development Plan. Professor IFE, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I look after the digital economy, bioeconomy, and science and technology and innovation.
You know, I said that. I said you wear many caps. So I had to take some out of it. Prof.
Thank you.
Prof, let's start this way. 2021, a lot of projections were made. But with the resurgence and the second wave, I know that's my first line of question, and it's relevant at this time. Many are saying that there are going to be reprojections from even the World Bank and the IMFs. What do you make of Nigeria, considering the second wave? It's like we might not get to where we thought we would be, maybe at the end of the first quarter.
We have seen the first wave and the impact of total lockdown. I don't think we are going to see that scale of lockdown because the economic impact of the first lockdown last year was very devastating. And so many sectors haven't come out yet. I mean, if you look at the transportation sector, there were over 40% in the second quarter. And even in the third quarter, it's still over 30% minus in the negative territory. So, and manufacturing is still negative, so it hasn't even come across the border. So we really don't think we're going to go into total lockdown scenario. But there are some mileage in tightening the grip on social distancing and controlling the crowds. And all these other measures like face mask, we informed us about it. And in the case of transport, just ensure that people have tests before they fly out of the country or into the country. But we can't risk a huge drop in our growth figures just by shutting things down completely. That having said that, I think the good news is that there is light in the end of the tunnel with so many vaccines coming up now. So we think it won't be too bad for Nigeria.
Prof, vaccine, that is key, like you mentioned. But some have also talked about the distribution and efficiency of this vaccine. When will Africa's most populous nation also really get into this and the distribution? You know, we're talking about the distribution chain now. How well do you see us making that work in this part of the world?
Well, first of all, we have to talk about financing the remaining 80% because, well, 20% has been pledged by Gavi to African countries. So, but then we know that the optimum is 70%, vaccination of 70% of the population. So there's another 50% that we have to find money to buy the vaccines for. So I think the first thing is how we're going to find the money. Of course, you may have to go and revise the budget to find some money for this. But distribution, yes. We will have to establish our priorities in terms of who comes first, second, and third. and then see who you use in the distribution network. And I think it's not going to be as problematic as it is in many other countries in distributing this. First, we don't have as many as they have. And there isn't that crushing sense of urgency, because don't forget that in April, people were predicting, including Bill Gates and his group, that millions of people are going to be dying in Africa, littering the streets, and we haven't seen that. We only have about 1,300 in Nigeria that have died over the period, which is only 1/3 of the people that die in a day in America. So I think we will plan for the distribution. We will wait and get our 20% that was pledged and then get on with it, but also keep an eye on the side effects and the potency of what is being distributed, and then allow a bit more time for the likes of AstraZeneca, and then the prices to come down a bit, because the first people rushing into it will pay a heavy price. But as more and more vaccines in their variety come into the market, you'll be wiser to know these ones that have less side effect, and of course, lower price will follow.
Prof, let's now talk about our interesting document, which is our spending plan for the year 2021. Everyone was very excited that it was signed on the 31st. It was signed before the end of the year. And we're talking about going back to the normal budget cycle, which is January to December. But one thing comes to my mind. We are not always short of maybe having documents or spending plan, but the implementation of this document to the latter is something that experts have also talked about. What do you make of our budget for 2021, even as much as it comes with the Finance Act, which is also to help enable this document?
I think we actually have to commend government for faithfully implementing the plan, and then on a January to December cycle, and then having a Finance Act that accompanies the budget. This is the second time. We had 2019 accompany 2020 budget. We have 2020 Finance Act accompany 2021. And when you look at that budget, first of all, the budget provides about 30% or slightly over 30% for capital expenditure, which is good because that's about the highest we get to on capital expenditure. Two, there is about 1 trillion underspent on the capital side of the budget for 2020. And government has allowed that to roll over to the first quarter of 2021, and that's excellent. That means we're actually going to have both a continuation spend on the 2020 capital component to move the performance to maybe around 90% or more. And then you have the same concurrent spend with the 2021 budget. So the overall impact is that there will be more capital expenditure, there's more jobs to be created out of projects, infrastructure and all kinds of projects, public works program. So we benefit. So this is even more reason why you should expect some growth in the first quarter and the possibility that we might come out of it, out of the recession. But we'll just have to see. There's spend in Christmas, which usually will attract a recovery. And then you add it to the double spend on the capital expenditure in the first quarter, then it becomes more likely that we could just about get out of it, just about.
Prof, let's now look at some global issues which we cannot shy away from. Nigeria is not insulated from all of these issues. Before now, US-China issues, and Brexit. Very soon, Joe Biden would also be inaugurated as president of the United States. All of this, what effect do you see it having on our country? Because Nigeria remains very strategic partners to all of these countries.
Well, why we were hit by the COVID in the first instance was because China and India and those big economies of the Asian economy, tiger economies, who were buying our crude, stopped or slowed down, in fact, because of the lockdown. So we had the cumulative impact of lower volume, production volume from 2.1 million to 1.3 million barrels a day, and then a lower price from our benchmark of $57 to about $20 per barrel. So the cumulative impact was about 60% drop in expected revenue. Now, but when you have AFCTA kicking in, there's a possibility that we could work on African neighbors buying some of our crude. So that will stabilize our volumes, to stabilize both sales and production volume. We also look at the possibility that they could also be involved in our refinery projects or buy some of our refined crude. So that creates a big market for a possibility of refining crude, because don't forget that we have 75 licenses out there for private refineries. And if they are all doing 20,000 barrels a day, it will be 1.5 million barrels a day. So that would be a big market for us. So that can stabilize and cushion the foreign exchange component of our economy, because that's what is causing all these disruptions that we are having. Then, of course, the second one was the fact that over 80% of our manufacturing capacity in Nigeria are dependent in one way or the other to some kinds of imported raw materials. And that hit us because the disruption in global supply chain affected us. Our industries just went kaput, and then you had them laying off workers and all of that. And the one that was even worse hit was the pharmaceutical, where we needed the medicine for the people who are suffering from COVID. And unfortunately, the likes of India, we are not even sending the APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, which our pharmaceutical industry heavily rely on. And then can you imagine if the CBN didn't do what it did in 2016 and 17 by demand management and blacklisting some of these products, including rice? We wouldn't have spent a lot of money, billions, investing in rice. This country that we are exporting them to Nigeria, we are not even ready to export. So we thank God that those measures were taken. But then, looking forward, we're going to be slightly in a better position as we were in 2020, because we have so many lessons that we have learned in 2020. And we have so many macroeconomic measures and monetary policy measures that have kicked in, which will manifest more in 2021. So I think we're going to get out from the extreme difficulties that we are facing right now.
Prof, I seem to agree with you that there seems to be a transition period for us to actually see the positives of all of these policies of government. But I'm also thinking as a journalist that, do you think government is doing enough to educate Nigerians so that we'll understand that we see what the central bank has been doing? Agricultural sector, trying to promote farming. Like you said, place ban on some products that we can't manufacture and produce in this part of the world. With all of these efforts, it's a two-in-one question. Can the central bank sustain all of this defense, particularly with regards to the Naira?
Well, the Naira Forex issue is very, very dicey indeed. And you know that there are aggravating situations around the Forex regime. One is that 90% of our Forex is dependent on a monocultural product, which is oil and gas. And we need to diversify as much as possible. But there is more solid plans on diversification in our new 2021 to 2025 development plan. But having said that, though, the CBN is fighting, because I've always said that we needed a CBN with an acrobatic mentality to handle the kind of challenges that we have in that area. People around tripping that, look at the diaspora remittance. We get about $26 billion. And suddenly, towards the end of last year, it began to vaporize away. We saw the thing drop from $6 billion a quarter to $3.3 billion a quarter. So that obviously angered the central bank, and then they now have to ask the international money transfers to please send people's dollar to their domiciliary account and stop meddling. And that meddling was just getting out of hand. And while they were dilly-dallying, then the CBN had to issue instructions to the commercial banks to close all the IMTO's Naira accounts, and which they did, because we're very serious about that. We don't, after all, the diaspora remittance, 26 billion, is more than the oil money. So why do we not take? But having said that, though, there are other complementary aspects that bring in and augment the Forex regime, we are disappearing very fast. So the international money transfer, the foreign portfolio investment melted away completely. And even the foreign direct investment, we haven't seen that for the last 4 years. But the thing is that in February, March, when the COVID arrived, the people became very nervous, and the investment started rushing back to America, where they have low inflation and then marginal increase in the interest rate. So there's positive interest rate there. But then after a short while, they started running away from America to the likes of Europe and all of that. So they're already on. So from our perspective, they were walking away. And there was other reasons why they had to walk away. The yield on treasury bills had dropped from 14% to less than 1% for 30-day, 90-day, 90 days, 182 days, and then 1 year. And then you also have an inflation that is over 15%. So we're already on negative real interest rates. So you wouldn't expect them to be around. So they had to go. But having said that, the opportunity that it created was combined with the CBN open market operation that exited private sector from the open market operation. There's huge liquidity in the private sector. And who benefited? The capital market benefited because they had to put their money somewhere. Apart from investing in the capital market, which made us become #1, of course, in Bloomberg's ranking. But also, if you don't find home for some of this money, you see them going to buy foreign exchange, import, and cause more problem for the economy. So you see commercial papers and bank corporate bonds coming in now, not at 15%, not at 13%, but at 5 to 6%. So it's a good time for corporates to borrow from the market. And that's why I'm so anxious about the 15 trillion infrastructure company, the world-class infrastructure company, PLC, that is going to be set up, which has been approved by the Federal Executive Council. I'm anxious that they should go for their 15 trillion capital right now because the money is cheap. And then they are intended to take away the burden of huge infrastructure commitment of federal government and run with it. Obviously, they have to rework them and then get PPP, a lot of them in the P. But then releasing the federal government to focus on agriculture, working with state governments, education, health, social inclusion, which is a very big success story now because we are getting quite a few people out of poverty. So the government can focus on those areas and let the private sector bring more private sector capital into the infrastructure story. So I think that's that. But government are also doing other. The government is not good in blowing its own trumpet. But I have to tell you that there are so many things that are being done. If you look at CBN has followed the agenda of 2017 Economic Recovery and Growth Plan to push more money to the private sector. Now he's doing that through increasing the loan to deposit ratio, bringing differentiated cash reserve ratio, and encouraging banks. Look, I have over 4 trillion naira of your money and he's not getting you any interest. Come and take this money and lend to the private sector. Over 7 years, which is medium term and at 9% and all of that. So they're encouraging them to increase the lending to the private sector. And so all of these measures are going on, and even when the COVID struck, CBN deliberately, not by accident, but by design, to insulate the financial sector and the banking sector by granting them statutory forbearance to restructure loans. And while they were doing that, lowering the interest from 9 to 5%, while they were doing that, they were also pouring money to balance the output and demand, so that you don't have a collapse in aggregate demand. So that's why you had the 50 billion go to NISAL, MD, MFB, and they increased to 150 billion. If you don't have aggregate demand, then all the things you do on output will not work. It will collapse because there's no money to buy. Nobody has money to buy. People are already being retrenched. So whilst it was doing that, it still didn't give up on risk-based supervision of the commercial banks. It still maintained it's very tight rein on their non-performing loans, which is still around 5%, coming down. The capital adequacy ratio, which is rising to 15%. So it still kept those. So the banks are performing well, and CBN has invested in infrastructure. Digital infrastructure, as you know, they enabled them improve payment services. So the banks they were growing during recession because people were sitting in their home. Yes, there was lockdown, but they were using their technology to do their banking. So that increased, and of course, ICT also went over the roof to 14% of the GDP. And then 15% growth rate. So there are some success stories in that, lessons that are positive, which we have to build upon in going forward in 2021. And you can't even talk about fiscal policy because the fiscal policy came out strongly and worked very well with monetary policy, and then dealing with palliatives so that they also dealing with the poorest in the economy, and then also going to the companies and making sure that those who are likely to lay off are giving some tax rebate to enable them to still hold on some staff. And government didn't retire any staff. It just carried on. So there is a complementary balance. And then, of course, there's a plan, which is the economic sustainability plan. So whenever you have a crisis, you need to have a plan so that different partners can join you and augment. So I saw all those two happening, working together, and giving us more confidence that there will be a better 2021.
Prof, I want to take it from that point. We've talked about the economic recovery and growth plan almost finally now, but we're now talking about the economic sustainability plan, which is that came up during the COVID-19 to address all of these issues. A lot of plans here now. Are we synchronizing this plan? Are they working in tandem so that at the end of the day, we don't have policies that will contradict each other? For example, the automobile players are out now to say some of the contents of the Finance Act is going to impact their business negatively. Are we not contradicting ourselves one way or the other in some of these policies? I'm not saying all of it, some of it, Prof. I like your view on this.
Well, it's a bit unfortunate, to be honest. I'm not happy with the story of the automobile. On one hand, it's very important to bring down the tractors because we haven't got enough capacity for the tractors, because our mechanization intensity is very low. Our density is very, very low. So we need as many tractors because of mechanized farming that we are pushing to heavy mechanization. You can have 5 million hectares and then want to go up to 10 million, and then you haven't got tractors. The tractor density is far low, very, very low. So I'm comfortable with that. And we haven't got enough assembling capacity for the tractors to affect that. So that should go down to 10. But I'm concerned about the other automobile, because you couldn't have 17 licenses out there to the private sector to invest in assembling cars. On one hand, we are struggling to get the full implementation of the Presidential Order 003 and 005 to encourage patronage of the local manufacturers. And don't forget, it's not just about buying the car. If you buy 1 million cars, you probably keep 2 million or 3 million people in employment with the mechanics. There are all kinds of jobs that are going to be activated when you have those. So but the question I'm going to ask is, where are the automobile companies when they were consulting on the Finance Act? There were consultations that went on. That was when they would have raised their voice, and then we would have supported it. True. And then you now wait until the bill has been signed, and then you start again. I mean, that is a bit unfortunate. But I think we need to revisit that bit on cars and buses, because we have capacities right now to deal with it.
Okay, Prof, let's now end off on this note. Let's look at recovery. Yes, I know some of the highlights before now is what will take us to that point, but what kind of recovery are we seeing? Some analysts have come out, a lot of projections are out, V-shape, U-shape. What are you looking at, Prof?
Well, I have to look at the aggregates that can point us to the right direction. I think I know that the Christmas last quarter, there is a spend. Obviously, there's always a big spend.
Yes.
But the first quarter, as I've mentioned to you, the headline is the ability for us to double the capital expenditure from the government perspective. But there are other things. The private sector are getting a lot of help with 3.5 trillion from central bank on the table and 2.3 trillion on the economic sustainability plan on the table. There are chances that we could get more public works done. There are chances that there will be more access to finance. And in fact, look at how it's going on. We have over 4 million hectares involved in rice farmers, 1 farmer for hectare, and then look at 4 million hectares, farmers accessing finance without having to bring collateral. The only collateral is their biometric bank verification. So the answer is this: extend that to more states, extend it from 10 presidential value chain to more value chains, and then have specialized anchors like exporters. If you have export anchors, let them build the supply chain national and global supply chain that could enable some of these products, which they're already controlling their input, grain seed and seedlings and fertilizer, they can work them way, their way to export, so that export revenue can complement. But you have to build quality infrastructure once it comes to agro export. Quality infrastructure is everything, so we need to put more resources on that side of things. So on balance, there are more resources hitting the production capacity side of things, a bit of balance with the household consumption, so that we can have progressive exit from the recession. But there are higher points on this journey. One, the CBN said, look, we're going to attack the power sector and take power to the mass market. And I think that is fantastic news, because to commit to 7.5 trillion growth in the power GDP is something else. While Siemens is handling resolving the asymmetries in the power infrastructure configuration, from power production to supply to the other stuff, all those shenanigans going on in the power sector, while they're dealing with that, anybody and everybody can jump into the power market and do something. And obviously, you're telling people to come and borrow money, because we've been waiting for FDI, it hasn't come for 4 years. But if you say, come and take the money. So that means that the right price has to be charged for power, for people to feel confident to come and borrow the money and spend on solar. So you need to use that to explain why you have to adjust the electricity rate tariff. Because at the end of the day, people are going to borrow money, they want to be able to pay back that money. So that's that, but that is very significant, because 30% of production constraint is power, and 20% is transport. And good thing again, a lot of investment is going out on rail transport. Rail is so critical, especially as we are entering into AFCTA. Rail is very, very critical. If without rail, how are you going to evacuate all the seaports? And then you're also trying to build 6 new deep seaports, Badagry, Lekki, Ibaka. Cross River State wants Bakassi deep seaport, and Bayelsa says that we want Bayelsa deep seaport. One is there, and then you also have another one in Port Harcourt, Bonny deep seaport. So how are you going to evacuate those? But they will make Nigeria a major maritime hub like Singapore, while at the same time our aviation could be a serious aviation hub in Lagos and Abuja. So there are things that are going to storm the 2021 that will change the narrative. And then of course in our strategic planning for 2021 to 2025, we are bringing technology and innovation to the center stage of our national planning, making sure that every sector is a cross-cutting theme. Every sector should be coming to find out, identify where are innovative technologies in your sector, how can we push that using triple helix or quadruple helix, or what is partnership, to move the knowledge transfer partnership, to move this to the industry, to move it to the market. So all of these inventions that have littered the whole of the hundreds of R&D institutes, we need to take them to the market. To do that, you need the funding framework, which we are providing, and then you need a partnership, a triple or quadruple helix partnership in the context of an integrated plan. So that is a real game changer looking forward.
Professor Kenife, it's always nice having you on the show. Thank you very much for spending your afternoon with us on Business Nigeria. I really appreciate this.
Thank you.